Welcome to the Big Life Podcast, where dreams aren't just imagined, they're built brick by brick, belief by belief. Hosted by Neal Oates Jr. and Robin Lewis, this show is your invitation to discover your amazing capabilities, invest in your growth, and unleash your potential in ways you've only dreamed of. Join Neal and Robin as they dive deep into stories, insights, and tools designed to inspire you to show up big, live intentionally, and give yourself away for the betterment of those around you. Get ready to rise to what you're truly worthy of. The Big Life starts now.
Welcome to the Big Life. Folks, we're so glad to be here with you again today for what we expect to be an episode that's going to add value to you, our listeners. I'm here with my co-host, Neal Oates Jr. My name is Robin Lewis. Neal, it's always good to get together with you, sir. Do a little check-in with our audience. How are you doing, sir? What's going on in your world?
I'm doing fantastic, busy, but productive. I'm making sure that I do the things necessary to accomplish and achieve the goals that we have in front of us, and having conversations with you about those, during those, for those. So it's another great day.
Yes, sir. And as I complimented you before we even got on this episode, that you're doing a really good job with your presence out there, man. I love what I see. You're adding value in a very meaningful and impactful and powerful way, and I'm proud of you, man. And if our listeners hasn't checked out Neal Oates Jr. Neal, by the way, just we didn't plan this, but where'd be a good place for people to go connect with you?
So the best place is going to be nealoatesjr.com. I think that's the easiest way, and that's NEALOATESJR.com. And I know we didn't plan it, but you talk about being like doing a good thing, increasing presence and being out there. The reason being is because of what we're going to talk about today. And the topic is something that I couldn't stay the same. I couldn't be who I've always been in terms of my comfort level. And so that's why this topic is so important, because we are living this out. So ladies and gentlemen, as Robin shares what we're going to discuss, just know that we haven't perfected it, but we are. So what's the saying? I'm not only the president, I'm also the client, right? So we are also working in this area of our lives, personally and professionally. So Robin, I'm thrilled for this conversation.
Today, we're going to cover adaptability and growth in a changing world. Adaptability and growth in a changing world. I think that this subject affects us all areas of our life, actually. It affects our leadership. It affects our business, our family, our faith, and our personal development, living into our potential. It affects all of it. And we all know, we've talked a little bit about this actually in a few of our recent episodes, that the world is changing quickly. Right? Things are happening a whole lot more rapidly now than they ever have. It's amazing, actually, how quickly things are happening. And so pretending that it's not is, we're kidding ourselves, right? We talk about the 11th commandment, thou shalt not kid thyself. And so if we hide behind it, that's not going to protect us. And so we're not putting it up there to scare you. We're just putting it out there as the reality. And so in that season, especially in that season, we're talking about something, and let me just lay the groundwork for it, Neal. We're talking about something that is true no matter how fast our world is going. We're talking about a truth that is an old foundational truth. Mm-hmm. But it's even more important because of the pace of our world today, and that is adaptability and growth. Sometimes, because of the changing world, it's going to require us to even become someone new.
Yeah.
And so this is not just a business skill, it's a life skill, right, Neal?
Absolutely. Now, this is where I want to make sure that the audience, that we have our ears tuned to the right frequency. This is not coming from a place of judgment. It's not coming from a place of arrogance or superiority. It's coming from a place of understanding, knowing that we all have to adapt and change. It is no longer optional, as you mentioned, Robin. But here's the question that I think is important for us to ask. Why is this topic so important right now? And the question is like, why is it so important for us to need to be able to adapt and to grow? And so I think those are two key words in the question. Why do I need to adapt and grow? Because one, it is not a foregone conclusion that you're going to adapt. Robin, I keep going back to the idea of you rejecting the initial idea of having email or using email. If Robin Lewis does not adapt, no growth happens. Now we look back at it and like, well, of course he was going to use email. That's not necessarily a foregone conclusion. And so I just want you all to hear, as we are having this discussion, are you willing to adapt and are you willing to grow in the process? I think many of our listeners, Robin, here on The Big Life, maybe we can take for granted that growth is going to happen just because we showed up here today, just
Yeah,
because
it's
we
so
woke up,
true.
just because we got dressed.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think a key consideration here is that what got you to where you are now is not going to get you to where you want to go. You've heard that definition of insanity. The person that's considered insane is the person who continues doing the same things over and over and over and over again, but is expecting different results. That's one of the key things we want you to consider. The point is that as things are changing, we need to change with it. If we continue, like Neal gave a great example, and yeah, and he's not kidding. If you're just jumping on here for the first time, I shared on a previous episode that I had a co-worker actually ask me, Robin, what are you doing? What are you going to be doing? What are you doing with this email thing? And I told them, I don't think I'm going to mess with email. I think that's going to become more of a distraction for me rather than anything else, right? And so do you think I have adapted? I mean,
My gosh, hold on, Robin. I'm so glad that we can look back and laugh at how foolish we are as people, right? Because now, could you imagine your life without email? Could you imagine you not adapting and growing and all the opportunities that would have been missed, your growth that wouldn't have been missed? But here's where I do, as you continue, there is a responsibility for each of us as individuals to adapt and grow. And a lot of times we don't want to carry that responsibility. We want to remain comfortable. Go ahead, sir.
yeah, it is true. So that's one part of it, is to adjusting to the new circumstances. I think we also have to understand that growth and adaptability are connected. A lot of times I might not grow where needed because I'm not willing to adapt. I can share with you. In fact, I probably will share a little bit of that with you, our listeners today, and how that came to play in my business, and some how I had to adapt in order to go to another level. If you are feeling like you're stuck in some area of your life, what might need to happen is for you to adapt and to grow. You might need to consider changing your approach. You might need to consider growing in a certain area to help you to get beyond that level where you're feeling stuck. And, a lot of times people don't resist growth. What they resist is change.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where adaptability comes in, is because we feel comfortable. When we adapt, we're changing, and that's uncomfortable. That's, we're going to be stretching ourselves. We're putting ourselves in a uncomfortable situation. Neal, just a couple of days before we did this recording, I had a couple of appointments that day that were, some of those things where you kind of gulp at, they were, like they were somewhat new and they were bigger than me. And I was a little anxious over it. And I really literally had to stop and pray and remind myself of who I am, and who I am, and ask for help. And I
Mm-hmm.
really had to talk to myself because I was feeling anxious. And so But after looking back at it, I recognize that the reason for it was because I was stepping into something that was a little bit different. And a lot of times, folks, we're not willing to go there because it is uncomfortable. And the danger of doing that is that we're going to hold on to what used to work even after it stopped working.
Yeah. Robin, now this is the part you talked about, the need for us to change and adapt. I want to come from the other side of it. What if I resist change because for me to change, I think that means something was wrong with me or something is wrong with me. And I've fought to have this identity. I fought to get to where I am right now. I fought for this success. And now you're telling me that I have to change and adapt and grow. I mean, well, why should I have to grow? Look at them. They are not as far along as I am. Let them come up to my level. Let them slow down and wait for me. Could you just talk about that? If you're willing to talk about that part where you are not saying that there's something wrong with us, that we just need to improve and evolve.
Yeah. So, man, maybe I share a little bit about what actually happened, at one stage of our business. Our business was growing, right? We were growing externally, like we were growing in zonkers, actually. And, I was out there being the rainmaker, building relationships and getting business to come in. And a lot of what was happening in the company was kind of somewhat coming through me. If there was a problem with a customer, the payroll, onboarding new team members, providing quotes to customers and, just fill in the blank, right? A lot of it kind of had to come through me. And, I started hiring people and trying to, get things going by bringing other people on and so on. But the business looked successful from the outside, but we got to a place, Neal, where, I was getting strained, others were getting strained. Had a whole lot more coming in than what we could handle. And I started getting calls like, "Hey, Rob, I put in a request for a quote and it's been 3 days and we haven't heard anything. What's going on over there?" And Neal, if I can be honest with you, I resisted that so much that I thought people were exaggerating. I didn't actually respond to those kind of calls right away. So if you can picture this now, not only is this happening, but I am not even facing the reality of it. And what I realized, Neal, what I discovered is that what the challenge was Robin. I needed to adapt. I needed to change. I needed to start doing things where I wasn't so much in the business and where so many things were dependent upon me. And I had to now start focusing on developing other people. I had to hire a manager. I had to hire an assistant. I had to invest in what we call an agency management system. I had to start putting systems in place. I had to become a leadership architect rather than remain the engine of the business. And if I had not, and Neal, as I share it now, I want to pause because I have experienced this. I see this so many times in other small businesses out there. It's like we get to this place and we're doing really well, but because we don't make that shift, that's the point. There's nothing wrong with you. I love the way you asked that question. There's nothing wrong with Robin, but it's just that I needed to shift. I needed to change who I became for the organization. I needed to focus on some of these other things that I mentioned. So that's just a good example. I think the point to you, our listeners, that we're sharing, there's nothing wrong with you, but you have to shift. And if you don't make a shift, and this is what I want to say that I see a lot out there in the small business world, is a lot of leaders don't make that shift. And what ends up happening is what happened to us is that they cannot honor the responsibility that they have. And you talk about, if you didn't listen to our episode last week, we would encourage you to go back there. We talked about trust. But what happens is when you're not living up to the expectations, then you are going to erode trust, and that's going to impact your business. And so I needed to make the change. And a lot of business owners and leaders out there, when they don't make that change, then it affects the business in a negative way.
Absolutely. And so we're talking about business first. And so I have a note here based on what you said. Growth does not just require more effort, it requires a different approach. And this is where we're going to go into, because this was a perfect segue into what I want to talk about. Robin, and I'm just insert your name there, ladies and gentlemen. Robin being the engine to becoming the architect, right? And so as we talked about adaptability and growth, that's the key. We can't just adapt. We also have to grow and be bigger. And a lot of that is going to be maturity. So we must grow in this because there's a responsibility to grow and adapt. Robin, start of the business, you are the engine. You had everything running. Everything came through you. You said, hold on, we've got to put some different things in place. I have to build something different. Would you go there, maybe even not just business, but leadership, right? And so this is where we tie into trust. We look at growth. We look at adaptability. Would you look at, as a coach, I know that you're having these conversations, and ladies and gentlemen, this is what's so important. We're not talking about things that we've read. We are experiencing them. Our clients are experiencing them. So we understand the pain, the challenges. But Robin, as a coach, how do we go from, if I'm a client of yours, if I'm a leader, a business owner, how do I go from being willing to admit that I am the bottleneck and then putting systems or processes or building something that actually runs, and now that shows growth, adaptability, and even trust in there?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And yeah, that's where we do help people. I think, one is the awareness, first of all, is recognizing it, because a lot of people don't recognize it. And a lot of times we actually think we're doing well when we have to be involved in everything. We think that's what it was all about, right? And a lot of us didn't sign up when we got into business to be leaders and to be leaders of leaders and so on, right? And so yeah, so the awareness of it, first of all, because a lot of times we think that we're actually doing well, and we're wondering why people aren't taking more ownership, right? And so one of the things that we have to do, a shift that we have to make, is to recognize that our responsibility now is to develop others. That's one of the things that really helped me as I found myself in that position, is to recognize now that our responsibility is to develop people. And so what we're looking to do is to develop leaders. And we can talk about that. So that's a whole thing, Neal, a subject on its own. I think another thing that business owners have to learn to do is to let go. And so that means delegating. That means recognizing that, if you might think like, if you don't do it, it's not going to be done right. It's not going to be
Yeah.
done the best. But you have to let go of that. And you have to allow people. Neal, you and I just talked about this recently, where if you have somebody that they can do the task or the role at least
80%.
80% as good, right? As what you would have done, then let them go at it, you know? And equip them and empower them to go at it. And that 80% might eventually become 120% in comparison to what you would have done, right? Where they
Yeah.
even get better than what you are. So you have to let go of that. I think the other thing that business owners, leaders have to let go of is, like, this is your baby. Like, you have built this thing, and you feel like if you let go of it, you're kind of, no, you might not be that important. And this is your baby. Can you really allow that your baby to be carried on without you? That's another thing that I think is hard to let go of, right? And so you have to recognize that it's still your baby, but your role now is to
Oh,
focus on what actually will carry the business forward. So now, I think what we help people do also, Neal, with this, is we help them to figure out what really matters most in terms of what they need to be doing. What are the things that only you as owner leader can do? And are you freeing yourself up so that you can focus on those things? And so just those are a few of them, Neal, that I would share. Please add your thoughts as well, because you're helping people with this just as much.
No, so I agree with everything you said. And so here's where I want to go off of what you just said. I agree with what you're saying, Robin. Our audience, they're locked in, they're leaning in. They're like, yeah, I agree, Rob, but I'm going to wait until I'm ready to adapt. I'm going to wait until I'm ready to grow. And this is where that is what I'm seeing as a coach. I'm like, you can't wait until you're ready, until you feel ready. And so I want us to go there because we agree. I understand. Yes, I need to delegate. Yes, I need to let go of the baby. I can't treat it like a toddler. I got to make sure that they have their friends and they have different responsibilities, and my role has evolved. But I am not like the timing isn't perfect. So I would love to hear your thoughts there, Robin, and have a conversation on that piece, waiting for, because I'm not arguing with you that I need to adapt. I'm not going to disagree that I need to grow. I'm not going to fight the idea that the world is changing. I'm just going to say, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, maybe next month. What do we say? What do you say to that, right?
Yeah, I think, and it's as you're asking it, I'm thinking of other areas where I have done that that's embarrassing to share. Maybe I won't even share them, but like I will share this one too, where I was kind of waiting to get it all figured out and stuff before I did it was a website. It's a great example, right? And like there's so many things. So the point is, it's relevant. It's we want to make sure that we have it all together before we actually step into it. That's what I hear you asking. And what I have learned over time and looking back and confirming this is that the only way you're actually going to get it together is actually to take the next step. It's through the action that we actually adapt. It's
Yeah.
through the action that we actually learn what to do. The reality is that if we can't think our way into the clarity that is needed, we have to act our way into it.
So, Robin, hold on. On that thought, let me jump in here because what you just said, that has been my mantra for almost 15 years. Turn thoughts into actions faster. Turn
Yes,
thoughts into actions faster.
yes,
And
you've
so when you
challenged me
say
with
that,
that
keep
sometimes.
going, sir.
No, no, I don't please keep going. That you have challenged me with that sometimes. Sometimes I've said to you, "Hey Neal, this is what I'm thinking about doing. This is what I'm expecting to do." And your next question, most times I can count on it, is when, you know, first of all, what specifically are you saying, Robin? And then when are you going to do it? And a lot of times that when for you is today. Like, I mean, what are you waiting for? Right? And so you do that very well, and you helped me with that actually. And you've shared, and we shared this way back some time ago, Neal. And at some point in time, we need to share this again because some people probably don't know this about you. But you had a close life and death type situation that happened to you, and thankfully you're still here. And but you recognize that day that you're not promised tomorrow. That's another thing
No.
you've helped me with is Rob, a lot of times, we think about tomorrow, but the truth is, are we even promised tomorrow? How do we know that we're going to be here tomorrow, right? You've challenged me with that because of that circumstance, life and death type
Absolutely.
circumstance that you had. And I think that's a part of your motivation to just take the action that's needed and do it today, right? Do it now. But
Absolutely.
but the point is too, is that, and this is what I want our listeners to hear as well, is that you won't actually get the clarity, you won't actually grow, you won't actually adapt until you take those steps. It actually comes through taking the action. So be encouraged. I have waited. I don't know about Neal. He probably hasn't.
Yes, I have.
I have like waited to want to get more clarity first or to be more sure of what we're doing first. And I'm learning that the only way that we're really going to get that clarity is by taking the steps. So you're going to be uncomfortable doing it. That's okay.
That's
I love
part
what
of it.
John Maxwell always says, you're never going to be good the first time. That's okay. Take a pill, chill, he would say, right?
Yeah.
The idea there is that, yeah, you're going to be uncomfortable. It's okay. I was telling Neal just earlier today that a couple of fumbles that I've made recently with technology, or I've been on very important calls and I didn't do what was needed to make sure that my technology was right and it was in order. It's okay. You're gonna get better as you go along. Like I have something in my it's even more ingrained in me now that Rob, you gotta do these checks and balances before you move forward. And
Yeah.
that's how you get the clarity, right? It's through stepping into it, even when you're uncomfortable and you don't have it all together.
All right. So you mentioned technology. We talked about some fumbles. I know you're team iPhone, I'm team Android, but I would like for us to, one, encourage everyone to go back and listen to our 2 episodes on AI and how it's changing and why it's necessary. But as we talk about adaptability, growth, world is constantly changing rapidly. We would be remiss if we did not mention A in this piece right now, Robin.
Yeah, it's so true.
And so we are not in our teens anymore. We've been in the business world longer than we've been out of it, right? And so we're having to adapt and look at the world, and we have to decide, are we going to grow or are we going to become entrenched and fight the enemy that is AI technology? Give me some thoughts on that, Robin, because
Yeah,
I would love that.
I think, definitely have our listeners go back and listen to those episodes. But where we are right now, it is in our subject today. It's so relevant. I think the point here is that we can't afford to ignore AI. We can't afford to ignore any major shift, quite frankly, right? It is there. We can't ignore it. So experiment, test it. You're going to be uncomfortable. You don't have to be the expert, but but that's an example of where we need to adapt and grow, right? And we're going to be uncomfortable as we do it, and it's okay, but we need to do it and recognize that, I think also keep things in perspective, Neil. Like I remember like things like the internet, Neil, like in the insurance world, we used to worry about companies like Geico or some of these other companies that, they only did business online. So as agents, we wondered, is this going to do away with agents? Are we no longer going to be needed? And Neil, what I'm so, it's so amazing to look at it now, right? So Geico has been around for many years. Geico has sold mainly through their direct contact, either for the calling them on the phone or online, right? They deal directly with the client. And right now in our industry, in the independent agency world, Geico is now in just about, in many of the independent agencies now, Geico has included distributing their products through the independent insurance agency world. So do you think that Geico is going to do away with insurance agents? We used to worry about that. People were sure that that was what's going to happen. And so keep things in perspective. There is something. We talked a little bit about this, so I won't go into it today, Neil. But we talked about doubling down on the human factor,
Mhm.
right? There is a human factor that you can't, it's not going to go away. And so I think that's something to consider as we think about AI as well. Recognize that these shifts, keep the right perspective about them, and then adapt and grow. And just like everything else, like the email, like I use email now with comfort and confidence, right? And I'm still learning a little bit more to use email. I might not be the best at it, but the point is that that's an area where we need to also shift and adapt and grow.
Robin, you and I, in our preparation for this episode, we had to do some soul searching. We had to do, I'm not sure if it was Gandhi or who it was that said when the mom wanted him to tell her son to stop eating sweets or eating candy, he says, go and come back, and came back when said,
Yes.
stop eating candy. Well, why? Because I was eating sweets, I was eating candy.
Yes.
And so in our preparation, we've had to do some internal thinking, some reflection time. And so now I want to pose some reflection questions to our audience, and then you and I can give some input here as well. You mentioned this one earlier. What used to work that has stopped working? What are you doing? What have you done that used to work? What got you here that has stopped working? Or maybe even if it hasn't stopped, the progress has just slowed down, and you might be seeing incremental progress, but not at the level where we want. Where are you working harder instead of thinking differently? That's the one. That's Robin out here being the engine instead of the architect. That's Neal trying to force things to happen instead of trusting and growing with the environment. And then here's the one that I really want to pose to the audience, Robin. Where has comfort become a ceiling? Right? Where has our comfort, this is easy, it's not that bad, where has that kept us from adapting and growing and been that ceiling that we hear? And unfortunately, many times, ladies and gentlemen, it's a self-created, self-imposed ceiling. So as I ask some of those reflection questions, and you were talking about sometimes we're not ready to change, we have to take these steps before we actually get the thing. I was thinking to myself, the caterpillar can't wait until it's ready to be a butterfly, right? It has to say, all right, I'm going to build this cocoon. I'm going to build this so that I can transform into this thing. I can't just say, well, once I'm ready to become a butterfly, that's when I'm going to do this. Like, no, it was part of the process. And then my final question to the audience is, I think this one is important because this is what keeps me adapting and growing. Who do you need around you in this season in order to adapt, to turn thoughts into actions faster, to grow? Who do you need around you in this season? I think that as we work towards living a big life, answering a few of those questions, but really who you need around you in this season will get you on the path to adaptation, on the path to being adaptable and growing. Robin, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think those are such good questions that you came up with there, Neal. And you can't read them off quickly. Is that something that we could put those questions in the show notes for our listeners?
So absolutely. Not only will we put those notes or those questions in the show notes, I think there are about 8 questions that I think that if we sit with, it will move us further along the journey. So I'll put all of those questions in the show notes or the description, whatever you call it, ladies and gentlemen. Be there. But more importantly than reading the questions, answer the questions honestly. That's our heart here on The Big Life. We don't want you to just listen. We want you to engage. We want you to grow as a result of the time that you spend here with Robin and myself.
That is the point, and so we do want you to sit with them, because here's the thing: a lot of times you don't know what you don't know. The reality is that, like, I've had people come to me over time, several times over years, and said something to me, like, and I'll just, I'll just tell you what it is. Like, Rob, you have to challenge people more. You can't just take what people give. You got to challenge people and hold people accountable. I used to hear that thing over and over. And whatever thing I rationalized in my mind, I rationalized it. I didn't know what they were trying to communicate until it finally hit. So a lot of times you don't know what you don't know. And so that's why taking the time to really stop and ask these questions. Neal talked about, who do you need around you in this season? We need people in our lives to hold us accountable. We need people to give us feedback. We need people to just give us a different perspective. We need people that are further ahead of us in life, in business, in your world, so that you have a model, and you have people that can pour into you also, that give you guidance and wisdom and direction. Because a lot of times we don't know what we don't know. And so you also, Neal, you talked about, who you're being around, and getting feedback, and that's so important. Because these things don't just happen automatically. The shift that we need to make, the change that we need to make, the growth that needs to happen doesn't just happen automatically. We have to be very intentional about it. And as we ask ourselves these questions, it's going to help us to put ourselves in a place where we can be more intentional about some of these things.
Robin, as we were preparing for this, you sent over your notes, and I don't want to neglect this note that you have here talking about the people, but then also the environment. And you have here the wrong environment can make stagnation feel normal. And so once something feels normal, then I don't want to go into the unknown. I don't want to grow. I don't want to adapt because it's comfortable here. But you mentioned this thing here about wise people. And I think that we all want to be considered wise. You have wise people invite voices that help them grow. And so could you just talk about the importance of the environment, getting out of the wrong environment, getting in the right one, having wise people, wise counsel around you, if you would, sir, as we seek to adapt and grow?
Yeah, it's such an important thought. And, it's an old thought again, too. It's not something new. Show me your company, I'll show you who you are. Or you might hear the one that your income is the average of the five people that are closest to you in your life, right? So the point is that the people that we are around have a lot of influence and impact on who we are and who we become. And so we want to be very intentional about being around people that are ahead of us. And so that we can stretch and we can grow and we can stay hungry for that. Like yeah, John Maxwell says it like, if you're the smartest person in the room or in the circle, right? If you're the smartest person in your inner circle, then you need to change that room or you need to
Hmm.
change that inner circle. You need to be and put yourself in environments where people are ahead of you so that can help you. I think you also want to be in environments where growth is a part of the focus, right? So you want to be in a place where growth is encouraged and
Yeah.
actually challenged. I heard a mentor of mine say when he had a business, he had a cleaning business years ago. They used to have weekly meetings, Neil, and one of the things that he required his people to share with him each week is an area of failure. Where have you failed this week? And if you don't come with one, don't come to the meeting. It was that serious for him. And what he was saying there to them is that he wanted them to change. He wanted them to grow. He wanted them to step out, try something new. See how you could make what we're doing that much better. Right? It's like recently coming back to the AI. I don't remember which company it is, but I remember talking with somebody about AI, and the person shared with me that their company just put out an initiative to every employee, and it was a large company. They want every employee to figure out how AI can help make what they're doing better.
Hmm.
They're encouraging them to experiment. They're encouraging them to find out how this thing, they're encouraging them to test and to, adapt and to make that shift. And this is what he was doing by encouraging them to step out and knowing that if you step out, you're going to fail. Being in an environment like that encourages you to step out is very important for you, I think. Being in a place where people are also going to keep you accountable, like they're not just going to tell you what you want to hear, but they're going to be real with you. So, in other words, Neil, is so important, right? That if you want to grow, you need people around you who are going to help you to see what you can't see all by yourself, and they're going to help you to look further. You're going to be challenged by what they're doing and where they're going, and you're also going to bring them into your life to actually help you to.
Absolutely. And so here is our hope, our belief, and really our goal with the Big Life podcast. It is for us to be those people for you and for this to be an environment that helps you adapt and grow. And so in that same spirit, I am going to ask or offer my challenge for the week, Robin. And so my listener challenge is to choose one area this week where you need to adapt or you can adapt. Maybe you should adapt. And so I'm going to give some examples of this. That could be, do you need to adapt your thinking, your habits, your leadership, your systems, your relationships, your use of technology, and here's a big one, your willingness to receive feedback. Robin, what do you have for the people, sir?
Yeah, I hope we served you with this one. The key here is that what got you to where you are now? What got you here? may not get you there. And the definition of insanity is doing the same things over and over and over again, but expecting different results. What we're suggesting is that a lot of times it actually is requiring a shift. It's requiring for us to adapt. It's requiring for us to change. And so we're here to serve you in that regard. Neal, I think we served our listeners really well, sir. Any final thought that you have for us today before we close this one out?
Man, I just want to say thank you. And then I also want to thank you, Robin, for being someone that does hold me accountable, someone who's challenging me to adapt and grow and being better for it. This podcast would not be possible if we wouldn't have challenged each other, if we weren't willing to adapt and grow, evolve, and then take the responsibility. So I just want to say thank you. And to the listeners, I just want to say thank you all to tuning into this episode. I am going to encourage you to go back and listen to a number of the episodes. Our last episode on the responsibility of trust. We have episodes on AI and the changing world. We have episodes on leadership. And the reason we're doing this is because we have conversations with leaders, with individuals like yourself, whoever you are. And this is what we're hearing out in the world. So we have something for you. Go in, make sure you listen, comment, share, subscribe, all of those. But we want you to know that we thank you and that we appreciate you.
Right on. And so we're going to end it as we always do. That remember that we love you and God loves you and there's nothing you can do about it. And until the next time we see you or you see us, remember, we are right there with you. Peace.
Peace.